Okay, let's start. Welcome to this talk about the potential new normal of energy demand. The beautiful picture you see here is our lovely university in all its glory. And I'm talking about some of the research that we're doing on energy demand. Let me move from this pretty picture to another one. This is the wonderful connectedness of energy research at Oxford. I mean, we're very fortunate to have such an amazing research institution on our doorstep, and energy in particular is a hot topic of research at Oxford. You can see all these different themes that are being addressed here, from solar, marine, nuclear, various supply technologies, and very importantly at the top you'll see economics, policy and politics. So there's about 200 people leading research groups on all these different fields, and the lines you see here are the connections between them. So it's very nicely meshed up. And my focus today is in the bottom left corner here, the demand and efficiency. I probably don't need to tell the business community how important the balance of supply and demand is in energy and electricity in particular. I suppose supply and demand balance is absolutely crucial. And curiously, in policy terms and also in business interest and investment, the focus always shifts to the supply technologies. They're slightly more sexy, and there seem to be other reasons at work that we tend to look at supply rather than demand. But today, let's look at demand, because that is an exciting story too, and probably with a lot of business development over the coming decades. So what I want to do is introduce to you a concept of actually getting away from energy and talk about energy services. It is almost self-evident that energy is in itself actually not a very good product. It's an intermediate good, which, you know, if I gave you loads of kilowatt hours, that wouldn't be a very useful thing for you to do. What we're interested in is the value that is created when we convert energy into an energy service. And I'll explain in a moment what I really mean by that. But a first inkling you get from the picture on the left, where you can see a lot of energy, but virtually no energy service, because nobody's actually benefiting from that energy being used there. My favorite example is almost the opposite case. This was a music festival where a very entrepreneurial man developed a system where children could work off their excess energy on exercise bikes, and all the festival goers who were slowly running out of charge on their mobile phones could pay £4 for an hour to have their phone recharged. The children were happy, the adults were happy. This was a happy transaction, smiles on everyone's face. But the remarkable thing is, if you convert this into the sort of cost of energy, which we use in wholesale markets, this transaction comes to £800,000 for a megawatt hour. £800,000. Now, if that doesn't mean much to you, wind energy today retails at about £50 a megawatt hour. So you may spot a bit of a margin here to be had. And this is because the value of having your phone charged at this point is incredibly high, orders of magnitude higher than the cost of electricity in normal times. And this is why I'm so interested in energy services. We really work with very outdated business models in energy, and we cling to them with bizarre stubbornness. So the standard business model today, as it was for the last 100 years, is we sell kilowatt hours of energy. And if the kilowatt hour is your product, then this ugly meter is your customer. And this is really where we are today. People sell electricity by talking to electricity meters. And this is where the communication and the transaction happens. So the move to smart meters basically means we can talk to these meters better. But what we really ought to be moving towards is this step to the right, towards energy services. And at the very highest level, there is really only three things, three types of energy service. It's information, movement, and thermal comfort. You know, the example with the mobile phone charging, that was because people were keen on information. They weren't keen on the milliwatt hours in their phone. It was the information they were after. And by focusing on what these customers actually want, I think we might get to far better and efficient business models in energy. So we're interested to find out what these things actually are. And there's different ways. I mean, as I said, talking to an electricity meter is very easy. You could also talk to appliances and ask them what they're doing, when they're running, and how much they're using. But actually, it gets more interesting when you talk to people. The trouble with people is they often don't know themselves. If we ask them how much energy they use for one thing or another, that doesn't really help us very much. So we've developed a bit of a workaround for this, and it's the app you see on the right here, which allows people to very easily report everyday activities. We ask people to use this app for a day, tell us about 25 things, and then build up a picture of what we do. And this was quite experimental. We didn't know if it would work at all. But if we hold these data against electricity use profiles, high resolution household data, here is what the statisticians among you should find hilariously funny, our very own Ttest to check the validity of our data. So we can use clever algorithms to scan through the profiles, find the kettle spikes, which are very easy to spot. They really stand out quite nicely. And then compare with the activity records when people reported to have a hot drink. And remarkably, and to my delight, people are very accurate. Not only are they very good at reporting quite a lot of hot drinks, but they're also very accurate in the timing. So it's sort of, the majority are within plus minus 5 minutes of the kettle spike we see the tea reporting. So that's very encouraging and has led us to ask a lot of detailed questions about electricity use in households. And then, of course, this happened, the lockdown. Which opened up a whole new opportunity for us to understand what things make demand high or low at certain times. And this graph is, well, the year so far, national grid electricity profiles, and they follow quite established rhythms. So you've got seasonal rhythms, you've got weekly rhythms, you've got daily rhythms. Here you can see the weekly rhythm very nicely on the left, weekdays, high demand, weekends, lower demand. And then you see the line here for the lockdown moment, and you can liken this to a cardiac arrest. Suddenly that lovely rhythm of week to weekend is severely affected, and the demand has gone down. The demand going down gets a lot of attention at the moment, but let me just put that into historic context for a moment. If you look at this graph, this is the profile throughout a day, 24 hours. You can see the demand rising in the morning, plateauing throughout the day, and then in the evening we've got this peak. But what you can see here is the top line, that was what this profile looked like in 2013. And every year since, with the exception of 2018, demand has fallen. And this is a remarkably little known fact. So if you didn't know that, please take it away and spread the news. Electricity demand in the UK is falling, and falling by quite significant amounts. So the drop that we've seen this year compared to last year, in a sense, is on a similar order of magnitude to what we've seen over the last few years through efficiency measures and various policies in this area that have been very successful, but rarely get the praise that they deserve. Now, looking at this profile, 2 points that are especially interesting that I've highlighted here, the morning reduction, and then around 7 p.m. this evening peak. That's a very interesting point, because this is when, in all probability, we still use the most polluting and most expensive sources of generation. And anything we can do to reduce that is incredibly helpful, not only to lower our emissions today, but also to transition towards net zero, which is really what we want to do. So understanding that moment is of particular interest to us. And we can now use these activity profiles. So here's a daily rhythm for a person, which actually has some resemblance in shape with the sort of morning active, then throughout the day we get fewer reportings, and then the evening, sort of between 5 and 7, when electricity demand peaks, that's also when our flurry of activity peaks in reportings. So yeah, bedlam, people come home, they prepare food, they care, they do housework, all these sort of things crammed into the early evening. That was before the lockdown. If we now compare the frequency of reporting of activities before and after the lockdown, the areas that you see shaded here is the difference. So the shaded pinky area on the left there, you can see that days now start later. So people maybe reasonably take a little bit more time in the morning. There's about a 1-hour shift to a slightly later start. But the really remarkable thing because I mean, we've been following these data for a while, and you don't see dramatic shifts. And what we see here really is quite fundamental. The reduction in evening activities, the 5 to 7, which is also our electricity peak demand, that has moved forwards in the day. So there's more happening throughout the day and then less in the evening. And that is fascinatingly interesting for us. And we can sort of look under the bonnet a little bit. Here you can see all the activities that have particularly strong shifts. Travel shouldn't come as a surprise. Socializing is down, work is down. Yeah, a lot of sort of expected numbers. But the interesting thing is these shift on an almost weekly basis. And the first week we saw loads of food preparation. That has slightly normalized again. The front runner at the moment, at the very bottom, you can see gardening. That seems to be the big winner in the last few weeks. Obviously, the weather has been fantastic, so that will have helped. And the other thing you can see here are these dots. The dots are the enjoyment. At the end of every activity, we ask people how much they enjoyed it. And on the whole, a lot of activities are now more enjoyable than they were before. The two that stand out in the other direction is socializing is obviously less fun. A Zoom call is nothing compared to meeting in person. And shopping, also understandably, probably has become somewhat less fun. Other than that, a lot of positives here. But one trend that we are especially interested in is a whole new way to approach the day in terms of laundry. So the old normal routine of a typical day would have been that people go to work in the morning, work all day, come home, and then put on a wash. And because the sun is gone and it's the evening, you don't have time to hang things out, so you put them in the dryer and then sort them, all in a sort of compressed evening when already cooking, cleaning, and caring has to happen. And that has changed into a completely different mode. So we now find that people tend to put on a wash in the morning, do a bit of work, then hang the washing out, do a bit more work, pick it up, and the evening, as we have found, is far more relaxed. And in some ways, this working from home has allowed us to find a whole new flexibility, which has positive effects in two ways. One, the washing happens during the daytime, which is preferable for the national grid, and the tumble dryer doesn't need to be used at all. And as we know from the enjoyment figures, this is not against people's liking. So just to sum that up, we found that the new mode of working from home, which may well persist beyond the lockdown, because a lot of people seem to like this way of working, it will have increased demand for a lot of households. We shouldn't forget that. And in fact, you know, for some households that will be problematic, but it has improved flexibility. So in a sense, some households actually deserve a discount because the electricity they're using is actually cheaper to generate. This flexibility has enormous potential to reduce system costs. So the more flexible we are with demand, the easier it is to use renewables, the less storage we need, the less backup generation we need, and that can really speed up our transition to a net zero energy system. And importantly, I mean, we have got business models out there, and some people, you know, in the last few weeks on an octopus tariff will have had negative prices, so there's encouragement there already. But this is still the sort of old-fashioned approach of just giving people prices and then letting them work it all out. If we move towards a more energy service-based business model, there might be a lot more flexibility and more help we can give people to actually unlock some of this flexibility while meeting their real needs. That's all I wanted to say. Here are some people I want to thank, including our generous funder, the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council. And if you would like to try this out yourself, the Meter app is freely available. You can go to joinmeter.uk, download it, tell us about a day in your life, and you'll be part of us getting a better handle on energy use. Thank you.